Try something with me. Imagine it's the day after your wedding, and you need the cash. So you take the ring you spent 2 months' salary on back to the very jeweler who sold it to you, and you ask them to buy it back. They don't want it, or they offer you well, under what you paid. Because so few used stones ever change hands. Second-hand diamonds are only about 5 to 10% of the ones sold in a given year, that there's barely a market to sell into, no competing buyers. So any one dealer can simply name their price. And because a jeweler's markup is so steep, you'd likely recover only a fraction of what you paid. So you try to look up what the thing is actually worth, the way you'd check the price of gold. And you can't. There is no world price for a diamond, no ticker, no spot price, nothing to look up. The most valuable, most romantic purchase of your entire life is the one object in your house with no honest price. And when you try to sell it, almost no buyer. So here's the mystery we're going to take apart today. How did a common colorless rock become the one thing you are told to spend 2 months' salary on? And, at the very same time, the one thing you can almost never sell back. Because those two facts should not be able to live inside the same object. Unless somebody engineered it that way. And somebody did. Let's roll the clock back, because the strangest part of this whole story is that diamonds were never supposed to be expensive at all. For most of human history, they genuinely were rare. A few riverbeds in India, and that was more or less it. And then, 1869, a rush kicks off in South Africa, near a little place called Hopetown, after someone pulls an 83-carat monster nicknamed the Star of South Africa straight out of the ground. And the ground just keeps giving, whole hills of the things. Within a couple of decades, diamonds went from genuinely scarce to, honestly, abundant. Piles of them. Now, by every rule of supply and demand you have ever heard, that should have destroyed the price. A flood of a thing makes the thing cheap. That is the entire law. The price of diamonds should have collapsed to something like the price of gravel. It didn't. It went the other way. And the question, the one that unlocks everything, is why? The answer is a 3-part trick, and the first move is beautifully simple. If you have far too much of something, you hide most of it. In 1888, a man named Cecil Rhodes, yes, that's Cecil Rhodes, rolled those South African mines into a single company, De Beers. And by 1902, this one company controlled 90% of the world's diamond production. 90%. Picture a reservoir behind a dam with a single valve, and De Beers owns the valve. Open it a hair and a trickle comes through, and the world calls those few drops precious. Close it, and the price holds. The water was never scarce. The valve just made it look that way. As early as 1889, they struck a deal with the London buyers to release only fixed quantities at agreed prices. Their own words were, regulating output and maintaining prices. In plain English, keep most of the diamonds locked in the vault, let out a careful trickle, and the thing that is actually everywhere keeps looking rare. Under their next great boss, Ernest Oppenheimer, De Beers ran 80 to 85% of the planet's rough diamonds, stockpiling hard in every downturn to keep that trickle tight. And Oppenheimer didn't even hide the logic. Back in 1910, he said the quiet part out loud. The only way to increase the value of diamonds is to make them scarce. That is to reduce production. Sit with that. Not find value, make it. By holding the rock back. But scarcity is only half a con. Because a rare rock that nobody actually wants is just a rare rock. You have to make people need it. And this is where it gets genuinely audacious. You probably assume the diamond engagement ring is some ancient rite, older than your grandparents' grandparents. Wrong. Before the Second World War, only 10% of American engagement rings had a diamond in them. 10. The one famous time a diamond ring marked a betrothal before all this? A royal one-off back in 1477, when an archduke slipped one onto the finger of Mary of Burgundy. A flourish for the aristocracy, not a rule for the rest of us. So the timeless tradition barely existed until an ad agency built it, on purpose, inside of a decade. In 1938, in the depths of the Depression, with diamond prices in the gutter, De Beers hires a firm called N.W. Ayer. And Ayer doesn't sell you a diamond, it sells you a feeling. They roll out a grading language, the 4 C's, cut, carat, color, and clarity. which sounds like cool objective science, but is really a vocabulary that teaches you to want and to measure yourself against the guy next door. And in 1947, one of their copywriters, a woman named Frances Garrity, writes 4 words that advertising age would later crown the single greatest advertising slogan of the 20th century. A diamond is forever. And the story of how she wrote it is almost too perfect. As the tale goes, Garrity had forgotten to come up with a tagline and scribbled the line down half asleep the night before it was due. And the detail that lands hardest, by most accounts, she herself never married. 4 words about eternal love from a woman who never wore the ring, sold to 100 million people. They invented the price, too. That rule that a real man spends a month's salary on the ring, then, later, 2 months, and 3 in Japan? De Beers made that up, out of thin air, and it worked. American diamond sales climbed from $23 million in 1939 to $2.1 billion by 1979. Strip out inflation and a fast-growing country, and that's still something like a tenfold jump in real per-person spending. On a rock almost nobody had wanted a single decade before. From a thing nobody bought, to a right nobody dared skip. And now the final bolt, the move that seals the whole thing shut. Read that slogan one more time, but read it cold, like an accountant instead of a groom. A diamond is forever. Keep it forever means what exactly? It means never sell it. And that is not a line about love. That is a line about supply. Think it through. If every couple who ever divorced or went broke or simply died sold their diamonds back onto the market, there would suddenly be an ocean of second-hand stones competing with the shiny new ones, and the entire manufactured price would crater overnight. So the trick cannot just create demand. It has to make sure the diamonds never ever come back. And forever is how you do it. Turn the ring into a sacred heirloom you pass down through generations, never an asset you cash in. And that second-hand flood simply never happens. The journalist Edward Epstein spelled this out back in 1982. To hold the price up, he wrote, De Beers had to plant a feeling that would stop people from ever reselling, and forever, in his reading, meant precisely that, never resold. That is the real stroke of genius in the whole campaign. And it is exactly why, to this day, there is basically no resale market, and no price to look up. That's not a quirk. That's the whole point. In plain English, forever was never really a promise about your marriage. It was a lock on the exit door. And that is the trap. And if that already feels a little cynical for a love story, hang on, because it gets darker. This romance ran on muscle. When rival producers popped up, De Beers would flood the market with their diamonds, tank the price, and break them. And it wasn't shy about doing it. In 1981, the African nation of Zaire, then one of the largest diamond producers on earth, tried to walk out and sell its own stones outside the cartel. So De Beers reached into its vast stockpile and dumped diamonds onto the market until the price of Zaire's product cratered by roughly 40%. Within 2 years, Zaire came back, hat in hand, and asked to be let into the cartel again. They hoarded, they throttled, they played hardball for a century. And here's the single detail that gives the entire game away. The company selling America its most romantic object could not legally set foot in America. De Beers ran a cartel so blatant that under U.S. antitrust law, it was forced to divest its American assets in 1975, unable to do business there under its own name. And then, in 2004, De Beers pleaded guilty in a United States court to price fixing, the industrial diamond side of the business, a conspiracy with General Electric, and paid a $10 million fine. Then it paid $295 million more to settle the class action over the gem monopoly, the engagement ring side, the romance itself. So the next time someone tells you a diamond's value is timeless, intrinsic, written into the rock itself, just remember it was notarized in a court of law as a cartel. And then came the test. The illusion was never going to survive. Science learned how to grow a diamond in a lab. Now, these are not fakes, not cubic zirconia, not glass. Chemically, atom for atom, a lab-grown diamond is the exact same thing as a mined one. The same material, identical in its chemical and physical properties. Put the two side by side, and not one jeweler on earth can tell them apart without lab instruments. And the lab-grown ones have gotten roughly 90% cheaper since 2018. Here's the part that should just end the argument on its own. De Beers itself launched its own lab-grown brand called Lightbox and priced those identical stones at 1/10 of the mined ones. 1/10, which is the confession, again in a price tag. Same crystal, 90% off. And then, in 2025, they quietly shut Lightbox down, because you cannot stand there selling priceless and eternal out of one hand, while selling the identical rock for pocket change out of the other. The emperor kept catching himself with no clothes on. The only thing that was ever different was the story wrapped around it. And even the cartel that wrote that story is fading now. De Beers has fallen from 63% of the market in 2000 to about a quarter by the early 2020s. Now, let me be fair here, because I don't want to be the guy who burns down something lovely just to sound clever. A symbol is not fake simply because somebody taught it to you. Think about it. Everything we hold meaningful. Rings, flags, holidays, whole religions. Somebody, somewhere, at some point, invented. The value of a diamond may be manufactured, but the meaning two people pour into it can be completely, achingly real. If you and the person you love decide that a ring stands for a promise between you, then it does. And no ad man and no cartel can reach in and take that away. That part was never the trick. And let me be fair on the economics too, because there is one honest exception. A small handful of truly exceptional stones, the rare colored diamonds, the flawless auction-grade giants, genuinely do hold their value and genuinely do resell, sometimes for more than they cost. That market is real. But that is not the ring the guy at the shopping mall counter is being sold 2 months' salary on. For the ordinary diamond and the ordinary engagement ring, everything we just said still holds. No honest price, and almost no buyer. And here's the fairer point still, the one that answers the trap head on. That lock I've been describing? It's loosening. Everything we just watched fall apart means the exit isn't bolted shut the way it used to be. You are freer, standing at that counter today, than almost any buyer before you. And people are already, quietly, separating the meaning from the markup all by themselves. By 2015, nearly a quarter of couples were buying no ring at all, and a full third were spending under $2,000. Not because they love each other any less, because they've simply stopped confusing the price with the promise. So here's where we land. The jewelry historian Jack Ogden once put this entire 2-century magic trick into one perfect little loop. It's a very artificial market. They're very valuable because people want to pay money for them. People want to pay money for them because they're very valuable. That's it. That's the whole illusion right there, biting its own tail. And look, I'll cop to it. When I was the one standing in that shop, I felt the 2 months' salary number tug at me too, like it was a law of physics I had no right to argue with. It isn't. It's a slogan from 1947. So if you are the person standing at that counter right now, here is the only thing I want you to carry out the door with you. Spend the money if the meaning is worth it to you, eyes open and gladly. But know exactly what you are buying. Not an investment, not an heirloom the market will ever pay you back for. You are buying a story, a gorgeous, deliberate $2 billion story. Because a diamond isn't forever. The story is, and the one thing they can never manufacture, the only real value that little rock will ever hold, is the meaning the two of you decide together to give it.